Hi dietitians, this video is just for you. In this video, I'm going to explain how to approach a writing task, how to use your 5 minutes reading time effectively, how to demonstrate the 6 assessment criteria in your writing, how to use the sample answer provided, and how to learn from completed writing tasks. So, let's get started. The Dietetics writing test includes 3 possible types of letter: referral, transfer, and discharge. The reader of your letter could be to a few different healthcare professionals. For example, dietitian to dietitian, dietitian to doctor, dietitian to nurse, etc. Until you turn over the test booklet at the start of the reading time, you don't know which scenario it's going to be. The most important point is to be prepared to be flexible to meet any one of these letters and readers. Every patient is different. Their social background, their medical history, their current situation, these will all be different. Just like you wouldn't speak to each patient you meet during your working day using the same language and expressions, you need to be ready to use language and paragraph structure to make your letter personalised to this patient and this situation. Only then will you be demonstrating to the assessors that you have the English required to score a B grade or higher. Turning over the test booklet, there are 3 things you want to check as a priority. Although you cannot highlight or make any marks on your test booklet in the reading time, I'm going to highlight these 3 things so that you can clearly see what my eyes are looking at and can follow the approach yourself. The first 2 pieces of information are provided at the end of the case notes, so go straight there first. Who are you writing to and what is their job role? So here we can see that you're writing a letter to Dr. David Green, who is the referring doctor. What are you writing to him about? So here we can see that we are writing about the current situation and changes made by the patient. Back at the start of the case notes, you will find the 3rd piece of information. That Mr. White was referred to you by his doctor for weight loss management. From these details, I can understand I am updating Mr. White's doctor about the care I have provided so far as per his request. With this in mind and remembering the specific reasons for writing this letter, to describe Mr. White's current situation and the changes he has made to his diet, I can start reading through the case notes line by line, deciding whether each one is relevant to the reader or not. To help make the decision, I will ask myself 2 questions each time. Is this case note relevant to the current situation? And will this case note affect how the reader continues care for the patient? If the answer to both questions is no, I can omit this information. If the answer to either question is yes, I will need to include this information somewhere in the letter. In the reading time, you have to make mental notes as you read the notes for your understanding. I'm going to highlight the notes which I pick out to be relevant so you can see what I'm doing. The patient's name and date of birth are going to be useful to include in the RE line of our letter. His social background would be known by the doctor and is not relevant to the current situation, so can be omitted. His medical history would also be known by the doctor, but might prove useful to explain the context of the letter and the need for the weight loss, especially the stomach stapling. The recent test results are an important point of reference to explain to the doctor where the patient is at currently compared to where they should be at. His weight history would also provide important background context, especially his recent weight gain, after the stomach stapling in 2005, as well as his diagnosis of diabetes in 2000. His current weight, height, BMI measurements are also important as a point of reference. Finally, I noticed the detail about the sedentary lifestyle and his difficulty walking. The next heading is a date. So I skimmed down this column to get a sense of the timeline, which is going to be an important point for me to clearly communicate Mr. White's history to the reader. I can see that he's had 2 visits to the dietitian about a fortnight apart. This also gives me a sense of structure for my letter, that I will split it into the first visit and today's review. The detail next to the date of the first appointment, that he was referred by Dr. Green for management of his increased cholesterol and triglycerides as well as weight loss, feels important, especially for my introduction paragraph, where I will explain the reason for writing. To be able to get a clear understanding of Mr. White's diet and any changes he's made, I'm going to want to read the next section of case notes a couple of times before I decide what's relevant or not. Some of the details from the first visit may be less relevant if they have changed by the second visit, so I want to be careful I only include the information the reader needs. Skimming through the details of his diet on the first visit, I notice that the first part of the day, the patient seems to be following a fairly healthy diet. But after lunch, his diet includes large portions and high-fat, high-sugar options, some of which are attributed to boredom. This is confirmed by the summary of intake section, which also mentions the patient has had many unsuccessful attempts to lose weight. Then there are the dietitian's recommendations. Choose healthy snacks between meals. Reduce fat intake by eating smaller portions of meat and low-fat dairy foods. Reducing his intake of bread and rice. Can also see that the dietitian provided a meal plan. Finally, that they've asked him to keep a food diary and bring it to the next appointment, which will be a review in 2 weeks' time. At the review, the patient mentions that the diary had been useful for raising their awareness of their eating patterns. And although there had been no significant weight change, they report feeling better. The diary shows that he has been following the recommendations about having regular meals and healthy snacks, but although he has reduced the amount of meat he's eating, he's still eating more than was recommended. He's also managed to reduce his snacking at night, which is down from daily to once or twice a week. He's eating more fruit and veg and has reduced his bread and rice consumption. Another review has been scheduled for 2 weeks' time. Going back to the first appointment, I now have a better sense of what is important or not. The details of the patient's diet are not really significant, just the summary of where the problems lie and the recommendations provided, followed by the changes reported in the review visit. Having reached the end of the case notes and talking myself through the situation, I now feel I have a good understanding of Mr. White's history, but also how I'm going to structure my letter. If I still have time left out of the 5 minutes reading time, I would read through everything again carefully, reminding myself of the decisions I just made. Once the writing time starts, I would now underline those notes which I highlighted so I have a clear record of the information I want to include in my letter. I would also turn to the blank page on the back of the answer booklet and make a very rough plan of my letter structure. In the introduction, I will explain I am writing to provide an update on Mr. White's weight loss. In the middle paragraphs, I will supply a dietetic assessment of the patient's weight history and associated healthcare problems and the situation at the first visit. In the final paragraph, I will cover the situation today and the plans for the future. I'm now ready to start writing. I have a clear plan in my mind, and it should be easy to record all the information in the 35 minutes I will have left, and still keep some of this time to check my work at the end. I'm not going to write the whole letter now, but just to point out a few things. Opening my answer booklet, I'm going to start with the reader's name and the address, which I can copy directly from the writing task. Underneath this, I will add the date, which is today in the case notes, 30th of August 2019. Next comes my greeting, Dear Dr. Green, followed by the RE line. But remember, the order of the greeting and the RE line can be reversed if you prefer. So here the RE line is Mr. Larry White, date of birth 05/08/1971. Then will come the body of my letter, the paragraphs. The introduction, introducing the reason for writing, then the assessment paragraph, the first visit paragraph, and finally the current situation and plan paragraph. Underneath all of this, I will add my ending, yours sincerely, and finally my job title, dietitian. As you write the paragraphs, think about how you will summarize the information. The aim is not to write one case note per sentence. For example, the recommendations made in the first visit don't need to be individually noted, but could be combined into a sentence on what Mr. White needed to reduce. Once you have finished writing, use any time you have left to check your letter against the case notes you underlined to make sure you have included everything you identified was relevant. Read it as the doctor. By the end of the letter, do you understand Mr. White's current situation? If necessary, make edits to your letter if anything needs clarifying or adding. Now you have completed your letter, it's time to look at the sample answer. There are some important things to remember with sample letters for official OET tasks. They have been written and checked by both language experts and a dietetic subject matter expert to make sure they are accurate dietetically and linguistically. That doesn't mean they are perfect or seen as the only way to write a letter about these case notes. You might have used slightly different language or structure to your letter. Provided you have communicated the situation as per the task clearly to the reader, this will not be a problem. When reading the sample answer afterwards, notice the similarities and differences. If there are any differences, rather than seeing it as something that has to be corrected in your letter, think about why it is different. Why do you think the writer used this word or phrase? Is it more formal? Does it allow them to summarize some detail more effectively? Why do you think they structured their letter like this? Is there any difference in clarity between your version and their version? I want to finish off by giving you a few tips about how you can get the most out of this set of case notes after you've written the letter. Don't just discard this task and letter and move straight on to another task. Take time after each practice letter to learn from it and avoid making the same mistakes next time. Here are 5 things you can do to get the most value out of each practice task you complete. Assess your writing and the sample answer against the assessment criteria. The criteria are free to download from the OET website and contain both a description of the 6 criteria you are assessed on, as well as the evidence of what the assessors are looking for to be able to score you at the different levels. Take each criterion in turn. Read the evidence statement for each level and critically decide which statement is the best match for your writing. Type your letter into a document and check your language and grammar by using free tools such as Grammarly or spell checker and grammar functions built into your word processing software. Notice the mistakes that are picked up and use them to create your own checklist of common errors to learn from. Rewrite your letter so you have a perfect copy to refer to as you revise. If you keep looking at your original letter with the mistakes in it, you are training your brain to remember the mistakes. Having a perfect copy to revise from will help improve the accuracy of your writing. Use the case notes as the basis for a speaking role play. Imagine you are having a conversation with Mr. White at his first appointment with you. Ask a friend or colleague to play Mr. White's role while you ask him about his current diet and negotiate the changes he needs to make. Search the internet for podcasts on morbid obesity or medical journal articles covering recent developments in the treatment of the condition to practice your skills for the reading and listening parts of the test. Remember, with the right approach, the writing test is something everyone can do well. For more videos and test strategies, follow our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram @officialOET and search the OET blog available on our website.